The elaborate stages have been set. The eclectic guests, leaders of 26 nations, including India, Belarus, Iran and Russia, have arrived. But there's a latecomer. North Korean leader Jong Un has crossed the border into China aboard his signature armoured train. Supposedly working en route with officials inside an ornate bulletproof carriage, the third-generation dictator is on his way to Beijing's victory parade on Wednesday, though he did have time to stop for a smoke. While he travels, the Shanghai Cooperation Organisation has been meeting, a projection of diplomacy and power that has been tightly choreographed by President Xi Jinping. The focus has been a series of meetings between leaders and the Chinese premier, intended on bolstering key economic and strategic relationships. Some of the closeness on display is to be expected. President Putin has been heavily reliant on China's tacit support since its full-scale illegal invasion of Ukraine.
Mr. Chairman, dear friend, both I and the entire Russian delegation are pleased to meet once again with our Chinese friends and colleagues. I thank you for the warm welcome extended to our entire delegation. Our close communication reflects the strategic nature of Russia-China relations, which are at an unprecedentedly high level.
But it was the visit by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, his first to China in 7 years, which has been seen as most significant. Relations between the two nations have been difficult at times, competing economically with tensions between their forces on the border. But with secondary US sanctions hitting India due to its continued purchasing of Russian weapons and oil, Modi is looking for allies to rebalance.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organisation can become the guiding light for multilateralism and an inclusive world order. I am delighted that an important statement in this regard will be published today.
Modi even holding hands with Putin at one point, a signal perhaps that he isn't bowed by the West's criticism of his failure to stand by Ukraine.
This demonstrates just how profound and comprehensive our specially privileged strategic partnership truly is. Even under the most challenging circumstances, India and Russia have always moved forward, shoulder to shoulder. Our close cooperation matters not only for the peoples of our two nations, but also for ensuring global peace, stability and prosperity.
Having flexed their soft power, Wednesday will see China's projection of military might. Beijing will play host to its first military parade in 6 years to mark the end of World War II, which China describes as the People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression. The assembled leaders, including those of Myanmar, Indonesia and Zimbabwe, will witness the precise troop formations and get a glimpse of what authorities say will be new hypersonic weapons and unmanned underwater drones. The only Western leaders on the guest list are from Serbia and Slovakia. Xi himself is expected to be flanked by Kim and Putin, playing into what's been dubbed as the axis of upheaval, with Russia also having been reliant on North Korean troops and munitions for its war. Military intelligence officers and defense analysts around the world will be studying the footage closely to assess the strength of China's military expansion and ingenuity. But this parade isn't just a show for allies and adversaries. China is struggling with a sluggish economy, youth unemployment and plummeting house prices. Xi's party is hoping that the grand spectacle will act as a rallying cry against rising discontent with the system they've designed and tightly controlled. Joining us now to discuss is Dr. Yu Zhe, Senior Research Fellow on China at Chatham House's Asia-Pacific Programme. Dr. Zhe, thank you for speaking to us. Firstly, what have you made of events so far this week?
Well, really judging from various statements and also the image we have right now, it really tells a story that China is now aiming to use both event, the SCO summit and also the military parade tomorrow, to lay out its global ambition by being a leader of non-Western world and a leader that led a multipolar world with the United States is diminishing its leadership. So I think that's the message Xi Jinping has been sending out throughout in the past few days.
And how happy will the Chinese president be about such a substantial gathering of world leaders?
Well, obviously, this is something quite significant. On the one hand, you have leaders, the traditional partners such as Russia, such as many other Asian republic countries to be presented there. But I think on the other hand, there's also some very unusual guests. For example, the Indian Prime Minister Modi and also the Turkish president Erdogan being president. So in a way, to show that China have this capability to assemble the most powerful leaders in the world in their hands.
A lot has been made of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's appearance. How significant is it?
Well, it's most significant and also very substantive. Bear in mind, this has been a very bitter border dispute between the two world's largest economies on the one hand. Then on the other hand, you also have the sense of that India considered itself as being a partner with the United States on the other, but suddenly make India has turned into China. And this really for Xi Jinping, for Beijing, is a diplomatic victory. But having said this, I think what we have to consider, it is only a temporary reset on its bilateral relations between Beijing and New Delhi. The underlying dispute on the border issue and also on the economic competition has not really been resolved.
President Kim Jong Un was a late addition to the program. How close are the two leaders currently?
Judging how close it is, I think it's very hard to tell, because what we have seen so far is really given the last 12 years since Xi Jinping came to power, Kim Jong Un have never really made a state visit to Beijing. And also, really, he has not really attended any other military parade Xi Jinping has held in the last few years. So really, it's the first time. I think for the reason that Kim Jong Un is there, it's not just because Beijing, but it's also because this will give him the opportunity to meet other leaders in the world, and most notably with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin.
Well, Russia has depended heavily on China and also North Korea since its invasion of Ukraine. There's been a new pipeline deal struck, but are there any tensions at all with the relationship with Beijing?
Well, clearly there has been quite significant tensions as well between the two, because Russia really come now considered as being a junior partner of Beijing on the one hand. That is not really a comfortable position Russia prefer to be in. But in the way, what really bound Beijing and Moscow together is this common resentment towards US hegemony to a large extent, and has really made this partnership far more enduring beyond the war in Ukraine.
And have there been any substantial deals struck with other nations attending?
Well, we have not really seen anything so far. But what's really worthwhile noting is Beijing just introduced its latest global governance initiative, something that providing the opportunity, given US presenting more isolationist approach on its foreign policy, and China began to advance its preferences in terms of how the international politics should be organized. And hence you have the so-called global governance initiative, something worthwhile making a note.
And what can we expect from tomorrow's parade?
Well, I think there's three things we can expect from tomorrow's parade. And firstly, you would see a showcase of that People's Liberation Army with its latest technology and largely domestic made. Now, secondly, I think Xi Jinping also will send a message by saying that China has been the victor country of the Second World War, and which has largely been undermined in the past, but now it's not the case. And he will give a different story. That is to say, the Second World War is not only a victory for Europe, but it's also a victory for Asia. Now, thirdly, I think this also tell a story to its domestic audience at a moment of very strong economic headwind. And Xi Jinping is aiming at using this military parade to boosting public morale within the country.
And in terms of that domestic audience, you've mentioned China is going through a difficult period with a lot of youth dissatisfaction in particular. Is Xi hoping this will somehow bolster spirits, or is he going to have to do more than just a parade?
Well, obviously, on economic policy, he will have to do far more in terms of regenerating youth employment. But obviously, for now, as I said earlier, it is a public morale boosting machine that the party is aiming at. I think also he's very keen to send a message to United States and other Western countries by saying China is determined to building a modern army that is able to asserting its strategic and security interest within the Asia region.
Dr. Yu Zhi, Senior Research Fellow on China at Chatham House, thank you very much.
Thank you.